How's it going, everyone? We are here for the Week 11 slate breakdown. As always, we have Eric Mack with us to cover the Week 11 slate. Overall, Eric, I think this is a fun one. What about you?
I think there are opportunities to be had, and it's good news because the past few weeks my numbers haven't been good in the daily fantasy realm. So I'm looking for a little comeback. You know, they say easy come, easy go. Well, I'm ready for the come. It's on the come.
Yeah, the last few weeks have been rough. The matchups just weren't there to feel comfortable fantasy-wise. I don't know what it was, but every matchup you look at, you go, oh, this
any which way but loose.
Yeah, it's been weird. So obviously Saints Carolina happened last night. not
Excuse you.
not much of an offensive explosion for the most part. Figure we can.
I think a lot of people were expecting offensive fireworks, and they probably disregarded what the Panthers defense can do, not what they have done. I know they've played poorly most of the season, but they've improved in recent weeks. And I think there is some question about Luke Kuechly going forward, but the Panthers are going to score points when they have to. They just didn't have to last night.
Absolutely, yeah. It just wasn't optimal. If you played Thursday slates and you stacked either side, not looking good for you today. But we got a whole other Sunday main slate for you. Steelers and Browns to kick it off at 1. Obviously we're all looking at Steelers skill position players: Ben Roethlisberger, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown. Are you interested in this? Are you worried about the home road splits, or how are you viewing this game?
Well, I think a lot of people are going to stack the Steelers, and that's probably a decent way to go if you're playing in cash games. In general, I think I would probably avoid it in GPPs because everyone loads up on the Browns. If I'm going with something, I'm probably going to go with Le'Veon Bell. He hasn't had one of those monster 200-yard combined yardage games, so I'm going to go with a huge effort for Le'Veon Bell here. Multiple TDs. Whether the score gets out of hand or not, Le'Veon Bell is going to move the sticks and punch it in the end zone. And if you're loving the Steelers, you probably need to love the guys that roll up the garbage time numbers. I know that the Browns have been very poor in recent weeks offensively, but Terrell Pryor, Corey Coleman, Gary Barnidge, these guys that can do some damage against the Steelers' 5th worst pass defense. I don't trust the Browns QB situation, but if you do love the Steelers, you got to like the garbage time.
Totally agree. If you think this game's going to get out of hand early on, then you certainly want to, get your shares of a Terrell Pryor, Corey Coleman. I think that's kind of the way I'm playing it. You mentioned Duke Johnson in here. Is that something you're interested in?
And I don't necessarily love Isaiah Crowell, but the Steelers' run defense was obliterated in recent weeks, and they're the 2nd worst team in fantasy against running backs. So while I can dismiss the Browns being competitive in this game, I think Duke Johnson might be a pretty good play because he'll be doing the receiving yardage. And, if they can't get the ball downfield with struggling quarterbacks, maybe they go to Duke Johnson more. And, in fact, I've been waiting for Duke Johnson to have one of those breakthrough games. Maybe this is the one.
Certainly agree there. Next one up here, sort of a battle of two strengths. Ravens defense coming into form this year against
number one defense in football right now.
Yeah,
and it's one of the best run defenses. So it's a battle of wills. 2 of the most run-oriented teams facing each other, and facing 2 teams that are very good against running backs. But I've long given up on fading Ezekiel Elliott against anyone. The last time I tried to do it was against the Green Bay Packers when they had the number 1 run defense and the Cowboys went in there. What Elliott do? He ran for a career-high 157 yards. So fading Elliott's not something I'm going to do. I'm probably not going to load up on him. But, he's going to get his, and the Cowboys will get theirs no matter what you think of the Ravens defense. Des Bryant, Jason Witten, they're moderately priced because of all the damage that has been heaped on Elliott. And Dak Prescott's been impressive of late in DFS. It's just his dollar value is now higher. So I'm going to fade Dak Prescott, maybe throw some plays in there on Bryant or Witten, And if you love anything, you love Ezekiel Elliott because we always have to.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting for Mike Wallace. Ever since Steve Smith got back and when he was in there early in the year, that's where Mike Wallace has seen the least amount of targets. And I
Yeah.
think Steve Smith being back, you threw him in here as a guy, to maybe look at. But I think what Steve Smith coming back really does hurt Mike Wallace more than anything else,
I can see that. I wouldn't, though, dismiss anything entirely because I don't think they're going to be able to do much on the ground. And I do think the Cowboys are going to score points, despite what the numbers might suggest, with the Ravens' defense being statistically the number one in the NFL right now. If you see the Cowboys scoring points, you have to see the Ravens doing something, and they might be able to do it with a little Steve Smith, Dennis Pitt action.
Right. Next one up here, a fun game, I think, for fantasy points. Jaguars and Lions. Not going to be a fun game to watch, but Blake Bortles, Allen Robinson starting to get things going in terms of fantasy scoring. Yeah. Lions have looked good for the most part offensively. What do you think about this matchup?
Well, I think it's one that everybody will like because there's times when both of these teams give up a lot of points. The problem is once I start trusting the Jaguars, they let me down. Once I give up on them, they surprise us. So I'm just not going to play the roller coaster with them. I'm worried about the Lions defense. I know they've been giving up points through the air, and they've given up the second most points to fantasy tight ends. So if there's anything, you're probably just going with Robinson and Julius Thomas. But in general, I'm avoiding this game. You got to avoid the Jags run game. I thought Chris Ivory was going to be the man, and then TJ Yeldon stole half the touches again, all over again last week. And neither project to score 100 combined yards. And I don't think either of them will get a touchdown against the Lions team that's allowed the fewest touchdowns to fantasy running backs to date. So I'm not loving this game in any which way. I'm even fading Stafford. I guess if you're really anxious to get some piece of this, maybe Eric Ebron. He's been surging. It's just that I think the game keeps a modest tempo. The Lions at home, a defensive game. Maybe you throw a little action in there on Theo Riddick. The Jags have been the fourth worst run defense in football, and even if they stack the run against Riddick, he's going to do some damage in the pass and potentially in the red zone. I just don't love this game like some should.
I think you're bringing up and highlighting an important point here, which is these two offenses are really not that great. I think there are some fun matchups, but yeah, overall, you probably shouldn't be all in. Like, they're not cash game. This is not a cash game type of game. That's for gosh darn sure. But I will say, I do think since Bortles is so cheap, I will acknowledge there's a lot of downside here. I do think he's worth it on DK, I guess.
Yeah, 250 and 2 is in his wheelhouse.
Yeah.
It's just there's so many other quarterbacks that I see on the board, even ones close to his price that I could see going 303.
Fair. Titans and Colts. Now, I'm guessing you're changing the mood here for this game, right?
Yeah, completely opposite. Of course, I'm following the sheep because the sheep follow what they've already seen, and they just follow it through the pasture. But the Titans have been playing shootouts on legendary level of late. Mariota's been incredible. The Titans Colts, this one should be exciting. I think you load up on each side, run or pass. You got to love DeMarco Murray. The Colts are 22nd against the run, and they figured to play keep away from Andrew Luck with Murray. Mariota's been hot. The only problem I dislike Mariota this week is the Colts have actually been better against the pass with Vontae Davis in there. And Mariota, his price has gotten up to almost Andrew Luck area. So if I'm playing a quarterback, I'm probably going to play the Andrew Luck play because Mariota is going to be more dependent on the run game. Luck's run game is going to have a little bit harder time against the Titans' run defense. Fade Frank Gore. Go with maybe Luck or his targets. I think Luck's a little more trustworthy than his targets. And then obviously the worthiest of all with the matchup is DeMarco Murray.
Yeah, and just like, we talked about, much different game, but with the Steelers and Browns, just based on the way this Titans-Colts game is going to go, like, I kind of want to have both sides. So, like, if I'm playing Luck in, like, Moncrief, like, I kind of want to get DeMarco Murray in there too, because I just feel like these two teams are going to be going back and forth all day,
Yeah, I think a good way to catch all of the Colts production is with a Luck play. And then a way to get the biggest chunk of the Titans production is with Murray.
Yeah, I like that. Maybe
I think though, and I say it every week with you, but I think Kendall Wright is still an underpriced bargain at wide receiver. So if this game gets loose and there's a lot of action on Delaney Walker, Rashard Matthews and Tajay Sharp, all three of which are hot, a lot of action on those guys. I think the sneaky contrarian play is Kendall Wright, even though he's priced as a backup.
I like that. I like that call. And he's cheap too. I was actually looking at him on Yahoo, and he's really cheap this week. So I do like that call. He could get one or two deep bombs in this game, and that changes. You're going to get super low ownership on a high owned game. So I do like that. Bills versus Bengals. First, before we get into the rest of the matchup, what's your take on LaShawn McCoy this week?
Well, I think McCoy is the key of all of it. The run games on both sides you can't trust Tyrod Taylor and any of the Bills' downfield weapons. And the Bengals, they haven't been a great team against the run. They've given up some big performances on the ground. So I think this could be a 25-102 day for McCoy. That's what the Bills need. Coming off, the bye, he was a bit hamstrung before it. He's healthier now. Their offense goes through him. This is an important game for both teams' playoff hopes. So when you play it like a playoff game, you got to believe they're going to put the hands into the back. So it's LaShawn McCoy, and I think a sleeper play. When you're facing the Bills secondary, you probably want to pound the ball at them. And the price of Jeremy Hill is a very good value. He's scored 3 touchdowns in the past 3 games. He could get the ball here 25 times, score 100 yards and a touchdown. So I like both backs on both sides, but in general, I'm not in love with the game.
Yeah, I agree. Game's not great, but LaShawn McCoy, you mentioned this is a big game for the Bills. So I'd imagine if he's healthy, he's going to start getting that workload again. As far as, we saw Tyler Eifert with that 70-yard reception. AJ Green obviously getting his this year. You like Andy Dalton and those two, or is this a week you're more staying a little conservative with them?
I think it needs to be said that the Bills have had some struggles against the pass, but they've given up just 10 TD passes. That's 6th fewest in the NFL. And what group are they toiling with? The Seahawks, the Cardinals, the Texans, the Broncos, and the Giants. Those are the only teams that give up fewer touchdown passes. So Andy Dalton, no thank you. This year has been a 1 or 2 touchdown performance every week for him. I know AJ Green's had big performances here and there. Tyler Eifert's going to have some big performances down the stretch for fantasy owners, especially in season long, those people that have him. But I'm fading the passing games on both sides, favoring the run.
Yeah, certainly. I think generally speaking, that game should be a weird one. Like the backup tight end for the Bengals might catch a touchdown or something goofy. The Buccaneers and Chiefs, this is one, you initially start out the week and say, okay, Chiefs are going to kill them, and then you kind of look, well, what do you think about this game?
Well, this is the Bucs and Chiefs have both alternated between being explosive and being disappointing in daily fantasy. So this, to me, is a frustrating game. Now, I do side with the Chiefs heavily because they are at home and the Bucks is inconsistency makes me want to fade them. It's a tough environment in Kansas City to play in. So who do I trust on the Chiefs? Well, I can't really trust any of it, even though the Bucks are 6th worst against quarterbacks, dead last against fantasy receivers, and bottom 10 against the run. I guess if you're looking for anything, if Jeremy Maclin is out again with his groin issue, you like Tyreek Hill. You might like Travis Kelce, but again, I just never can be sure with either of these teams, so I'm trying to avoid it. There's going to be points scored. I know there is, just because crazy things happen when these teams play. But I just don't know where it's going to come from.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. You know, we want to put Travis Kelce in there every week and say, oh, okay, well, he's the best player with Maclin out, so they're going to just target hog him, and, you know, he's going to get 8 receptions. But that just isn't how they do things. Andy Reid likes torturing us, and he's given Tyreek Hill, 15 targets last week. So I think they're interesting tournament guys, but nothing you feel really comfortable about. What's your take on Spencer Ware?
Very good offense because, Andy Reid is always kind on the running backs. It's just, I think the Bucks are a bit of an underplayed, not played in terms of fantasy speaking, but despite being bottom 10 against the run, I think their linebacking core and their front's a lot better than what you would expect. So I think like what we saw with Ware is kind of modest numbers. And, his price is getting up there too. So I'm not excited why Ware. I think there's too many elite backs who are putting up, the monster 150-yard, 2-touchdown performances that I just can't see Ware doing against anyone.
We would have loved Spencer Ware last year at this time. He would have been extremely valuable. But when you got Zeke Elliott going for like 300 total yards every week, it certainly changes things. Last one for this, Mike Evans, someone you're looking at, or?
Well, generally he's a very good cash game option because he gets a lot of targets. But again, I think this is a game that might surprise you and not play as loose as some of the Bucks-Chiefs games have been. I think this is going to be more of a defensive struggle than you might expect. Having Justin Houston back, all-pro linebacker potentially this week, can slow down a lot of the Bucks, and I think they can latch on to Mike Evans because he's just kind of a lonely receiver. There's weeks that the Bucks will play loose games and have big numbers, and Mike Evans will go off for 2 touchdowns. This is just not one of them in my book.
You mentioned a very important piece here, which is that the Chiefs have been playing most of their season defensively without Justin Houston, and they've been getting pressure, all over the place. So if he comes back and he's his old self, look out in the second half.
Look out for that Chiefs defense, which is already a pretty good scoring fantasy defense. Maybe that's the sleeper play against the error-prone Bucks.
Certainly. Bears-Giants next. Oh, boy, Jay Cutler. he I won't say he reeled everyone in, but he reeled a lot of us in 2 weeks ago. And I was kind of in on him, man. I made a few lineups with him and Alshon and
Yeah, I got fooled.
Once again, it's just Jay Cutler. And I don't know. What do you think of this Bears offense, I guess, to start off?
Well, the Bears offense is disappointing. I think that's the only way to evaluate it. Now, Jordan Howard could get his volume. It's just the Giants are pretty good. They're number 3 against fantasy quarterbacks, number 7 against the run. And, the Bears had a good matchup last week against Tampa and just completely pooped the bed, as they say. And I don't think the Giants are going to falter, after all this time they've taken to build up what they've become. They're actually a pretty good defensive team, a defensive team that you don't want to contend with in fantasy. And the Bears aren't an offense that you want to look to. Now, the one thing you look to with Alshon Jeffrey down is maybe there's some bargains among the receiving targets. I wouldn't go with the receivers, though, because Janoris Jenkins and the Giants corners have been playing pretty well. I think maybe it's Zach Miller again, but I said that last week and it let me down. I'm just fading everything on the Bears. And then if you want to do anything, load up on the Giants passing game. The Bears are second worst in fantasy against wide receivers. The Giants have been great at home with the passing game. Eli Manning, in his past 3 games at home, 10 TD passes. The 2 home games before that this season, 368 yards, 350 yards. So Odell Beckham, Sterling Shepard, Victor Cruz, who's returning and nicely priced, even tight end Will Tye, all of them can work against the Bears.
Interesting. Yeah. So maybe, it'll be sneaky. And playing Eli Manning would be really sneaky this week, I think, and you mentioned those home splits, especially if you stack him with Odell Beckham. I think that's a really nice contrarian way to go. As far as this defense, I think, you kind of touched on it, but over the last few years, I think I got used to the Giants being a bad defense and kind of targeting them.
And they've been legendarily bad. Even earlier this year at times they were bad, but it seems to be turning the tide.
They've turned it around a little bit, and you kind of notice it week to week because they're just not allowing the same type of fantasy production as they used to. So, yeah, it should be tough the rest of the way for the Bears, especially without Alshon. It's gonna be tough for them to move the ball. But yeah, beyond that, I think you mentioned hit on all the big names there.
I want to throw out a trivia question here for you. Mid video podcast trivia question. What is Ezekiel Elliott's lowest rushing total this season?
I know it was week 1 or week 2.
Okay, I'll accept that answer. And
I don't know.
Who's the only team to hold him under 83 yards?
Was it the Giants?
It was the Giants. So
wow,
those people are hoping for the volume on Howard. Yeah, you'll get volume, but you might not get the totals that you're looking for.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that in itself, looking back, is pretty incredible because he's about to break, the rookie rushing yard record.
Yeah.
If he continues on. Cardinals and Vikings, 2 teams.
Speaking of run defenses and defenses.
2 teams that have kind of. I didn't have high expectations for the Vikings heading into the year. They made me have high expectations for them. They sucked me in, and they're spitting me back out right now. What's your read on the Vikings defense and team as a whole, I guess, right now?
Well, I think both these teams have been disappointing in their postseason race. But one thing is they're still ranked number 2 and 3 in total defense. So, when you get 2 teams locked up like this in a defensive struggle, probably not a great place to look for fantasy numbers. I know there was a lot of promise with the Cardinals from time to time with the downfield passing game, Carson Palmer, Larry Fitzgerald, J.J. Nelson at times, John Brown, the lost Michael Floyd, where's his value? Punt it all and just play David Johnson. He's the bell cow that's really crushed Palmer and all those targets just because he's been so good. There hasn't been a game where David Johnson hasn't rung up 100 combined plus yards. That's an amazing stat. And not only is he a yardage guy, he's a touchdown machine. So even if you see this game playing 14-10, defensive struggle, David Johnson's still the play in here.
He's a monster. And, I wouldn't say I had reservations before the year, but I wasn't ready to crown him like this all pro, like best running back in the league. I'm here. I'm ready to go now. So even in tough matchups, like you mentioned, he's just going to get so many touches that you don't have to like the offense to just know he's going to figure it out somehow. So I think he's certainly intriguing. On the Vikings side, Stephon Diggs obviously getting a ton of targets. Is that someone you're looking at this week?
Not necessarily going to look at him in terms of, I think he's going to get multiple touchdowns just because I can't trust Sam Bradford, not against the Cards number 2 ranked defense. But if you're going with anyone from the Viking side, it can't be the running game with that brutal offensive line. It can't be the tight end because the Cardinals are number 1 in fantasy against tight ends. They're number 1 in fantasy against running backs, and they're number 5 against quarterbacks and receivers. So I'm punting everything except Stephon Diggs, if only because his price is, reasonable and his volume is high.
Mm-hmm. Definitely Definitely with you there. That should be a good real game, I think.
Yeah, if you're into defense.
Yeah. Dolphins and Rams. Let me just take a second to be excited that Jared Goff, the number one pick in the draft, making his first start. They finally, decided to let it happen. Dolphins, Rams. What's your takes?
Here's the thing. I think all this attention on Goff starting is incredible. It blurs the reality that Todd Gurley is going to go off for 100 yards and multiple touchdowns.
Let's go.
The Dolphins have allowed a fantasy low 3 touchdowns to running backs. But if Las Vegas is right and the Rams are going to score 19 points, it's not going to be with rookie Jared Goff in that challenged passing game. It's going to be Gurley. It's going to be Gurley early and often. Rookie quarterback will lean on the running back, short passes to the running back. Forget everything with the Rams. This is Todd Gurley's week. The Dolphins are, I believe, 3rd worst against the run. It's somewhere in that top 5 there. I think it's 3rd worst against the run. Big week for Gurley. 100 yards, 2 touchdowns at home, and an upset. I guess if you can call this an upset victory of the Dolphins.
Let's go. I like this. I feel like you're giving me
I
a
knew you
pep
were a
talk
Rams
right
fan,
now.
so I gave you something to cheer about.
We'll take anything right now. Yeah, this is going to be a weird game, and I kind of like it for the Rams. As you mentioned, it's going to be a little more focus on Goff. I think they're going to be trying to trick him into rookie mistakes. I'm hoping the Rams rely on the run still. They've kind of gone away from it lately. We will see. Gurley's certainly an interesting tournament guy at his price now. I mean, he's super cheap now.
Yeah.
So I think that's something to take into account. But yeah, overall, tough to trust Kenny Britt with a new quarterback. Tough to trust Tavon with a new quarterback. As far as the Dolphins side, Jay Ajayi and Jarvis Landry, really the 2 guys. Are you looking at either of them?
No, and the reason is the Rams are better defense and a better defensive front than you think. I know Jay Ajayi has a good offensive line, and he's rush heavy, and in his 4 games since taking over for Arian Foster, he's rushed for 200 yards twice, and he's averaged over 25 touches a game. So he'll get volume, but the Rams, surprisingly, you might be interested to hear, they're number 7 defense. They're the number 7 defense in the NFL, and they're top 10 with just 3.9 yards per rushing attempt. So I'm not in love with the Dolphins side scoring points on the Rams on the road.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Should be interesting to see. I think, Ajayi's an interesting tournament guy because sometimes the Rams give up big games, but there's also a huge downside there where they could just totally shut them down. So should be a fun game just for like storylines. Maybe Gurley gets going. Maybe Goff isn't horrible, but as far as, stacking, not really a move for DFS.
Yeah, Goff will get 150 yards, maybe a touchdown. If it's a touchdown, it's probably Gurley in the passing game.
Yep. Patriots 49ers, not a game that should be close or even a game by halftime. I envision LeGarrette Blount running over 49ers and making them cry. Is that what you're getting as well?
Well, this game is so clearly in the Pats' favor. We struggle to find any reason not to like everything on the board here. And that includes the 49ers, mind you. Because if you assume that Tom Brady returning to his hometown of San Francisco and his childhood team, the 49ers, is going to lay an egg, you're mistaken. And then they're going to get up so high so early that the 49ers are going to be toiling in garbage time against the Patriots roster cellar dwellers. So it's going to be a good play. Our favorite play on the board is Martellus Bennett. The likelihood is Rob Gronkowski will not be risked. He's not risked very often anyway, but with the lung injury that he has in a non-conference game on the road across the United States, I think this is a great week for Martellus Bennett to be the most popular play in daily fantasy at tight end. And then if you like Brady against the 49ers, you got to like Julian Edelman. He's lurking underpriced. Sign us up for that. LeGarrette Blount coming off 3 touchdowns against the tough Seahawks run defense, and now he's facing the worst run defense in the NFL that's ranks dead last against fantasy running backs. Sign us up for that. And then, even the Pats defense against the Chip Kelly offense that predictably is dead last in time of possession. I'm loving it all. And if I love it all on the Pats side, that means I should like Colin Kaepernick at his price. He's been productive in garbage time. He could have 250 yards and 2 touchdowns passing, throw in 50 yards rushing and a touchdown, and you got yourself a big-time fantasy quarterback in DFS at his price. And then even if you think the 49ers are going to blow it out and they have to abandon the running game, they're going to score points, and it probably won't be too often with the pass. If you're thinking it's going to be a 45-21 game, Carlos Hyde could get in the end zone a couple times. So I like it all. I like it all. Even the 49ers. Tough to like against the Pats, but I like it all.
That's actually super interesting. You think about this game, and if you think the Patriots are just going to thrash them early offensively, which I do, then you should be interested in the second half comeback mode for the 49ers for sure.
Because the Patriots, in a non-conference road game that has no impact on their season, is not going to, in a blowout, is not going to leave their premium guys out there. There's going to be opportunity.
Absolutely. And like you mentioned, Martellus Bennett, really the guy focusing in on. Edelman, very interesting on DraftKings. And so now you got my brain working. Who would we target? Like, Jeremy Curley's been good this year. Is he someone that's kind of viable?
Yeah, if you're going with the receiver, I just don't trust the consistency of the passing game downfield. So I'm just going to go Kaepernick because he throws in the bonus of the rushing totals and scrambling out of the pocket on broken plays. And then obviously Hyde because, he could get multiple short touchdowns, as they punch the ball in the end zone, if they punch the ball in the end zone.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's a fun game, at least for the Patriots. Another one, probably not going to be fun.
Not fun at all.
for anyone, really. But Eagles and Seahawks. Eagles at home coming off a big road win against the Patriots. Russell Wilson looks like his old self. What do you got here? There's two birds. The 2 birds mascots. Yeah.
Bird is the word. Punt. The two, the Eagles. There's not much praise that you can have for them at Seattle. Obviously, the toughest place to play in football for fantasy options. I guess if there's a way to go after Ryan Matthews threw the monkey wrench in it last week with that 100 yards and a touchdown. Darren Sproles is a guy that I'd look at if you're playing an Eagles side option here because, if the Seahawks play as smooth offensively as they have in the past 2 weeks, it's going to leave some garbage time and some wide open, prevent defense, cover 3, throw it to the back, Darren Sproles underneath, let him work. I know Ryan Matthews could be a contrarian play because, he has scored 3 touchdowns in or 4 touchdowns in the past 3 games. And he usually steals the production we want out of Sproles, but I can't trust the Eagles putting up a lot of points against the Seahawks. So on the Seahawks side, Russell Wilson's price is still in a nice bargain range. Therefore, if you like Russell Wilson, you like Jimmy Graham. Doug Baldwin, 3 touchdowns last week. The return of Thomas Rawls, I'm not in love with because we've seen at times this year they've been cautious with Rawls on injuries, and I think they'll be just as cautious this week. I know they did release Christine Michael, but they did it more because of CJ Procise's ability than Rawls' health. So I think the value of Procise in a passing receiving back type way might be better play than Rawls.
I like it. Yeah, Procise really the guy I'm looking for on DK and FanDuel. He's just so cheap right now in a potentially, those targets. When you get a passing target for a running back, it's so easy to really get 10 yards on a reception, especially if the defense is back or it's 3rd down and 15. I just think it's so easy If he gets 7 or 8 targets, it's going to be easy to
take
get
phone
that.
calls.
Yeah, Jesus, getting calls up the. Um, so with that considered, I do like Procise again. Next game here, Packers and Redskins. I mean, pretty much a must win for both teams. What are you looking at here?
Well, I think you can look toward Aaron Rodgers. He's been a monster since Eddie Lacy went down. He shouldered the offensive load, and what you've seen with his defense is it's forced him to score a lot of points. Marcus Mariota and the Titans lit him up. I think that gives you some optimism on the Redskins side in the passing game. I think Rodgers is a pretty safe bet for 303 himself. Even if you love the fact that Josh Norman has brought a lockdown corner to the Redskins and allowed them to avoid giving up 303 performances. They haven't given that up since week 1 in Big Ben. But I still like Rodgers, Nelson, Devontae Adams. I think the best Packers play, though, is probably James Starks. He's getting healthier. The Redskins are a bottom 10 run defense, and they've given up 11 rushing TDs in 9 games. So Starks is a pretty good priced play. And even if they shut down the run, Starks can do the damage in the short passing game. Rodgers has always liked to use the backs that way. He's used Ty Montgomery and Randall Cobb that way. Cobb's a little banged up right now. Starks is probably the healthier option. Ty Montgomery blew his chance to be a running back. So I'm going with Rodgers if I'm playing a QB there, and James Starks. But Kirk Cousins, he should be able to rack up decent numbers against Rodgers, especially when you consider what the Packers secondary has allowed of late. They are a top 4 run defense still, so I'm fading Rob Kelly. But if you're fading Rob Kelly, you should like the Redskins to score points via the pass. So throw in Jamison Crowder. If Deshaun Jackson's active, you can consider him. If he's not, go Crowder, Garcon. I think you should love Jordan Reed at the tight end position. There's been a lot of shaky tight ends in DFS, but Reed coming off a bad outing last week against a good defense should rebound nicely against the bad one.
Totally agree on Reed. I think he's a great contrarian play. Gonna have, I think, lower ownership just because he's still so expensive and coming off a bad game. I think he's a great play. I love Rodgers again. I'm fine with paying up for him. As we've seen of late, even with Starks in there, I don't think Starks necessarily hurts his passing production.
Right.
There's just more dump offs, like you mentioned. And Devontae Adams and Jordy seems to be, the new pecking order there. I don't know what's going on with Randall Cobb, but it seems like Adams the new second guy there. So, yeah, I think I like Reed. As far as, the whole game, I think you could play some of these guys together and feel pretty comfortable with it.
Should be some points on both sides of the ball.
Absolutely. Monday night here, Texans and Raiders.
This one should be fun. Way of points. I think this game is much less in the way of points. The Redskins, Packers. Both defenses give up points at times, but the Texans are one of the best pass defenses in football. They're not ranked number 1 against fantasy quarterbacks, number 3 against the receivers, and number 3 overall against the pass. So for everybody that's been in love with Derek Carr, Amari Cooper, and Michael Crabtree, you got to look at a more of a 250-2 option than a 303, which I think that lack of passing game for the homestanding Raiders puts more of it on the run. And that fits nicely for Latavius Murray, who went into the bye with 114 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Broncos defense. He got healthier on the bye week with his ankle issue. And as an added bonus here, the Texans have been a team that you run the ball at because you struggle to throw the ball against them. They're 7th worst against the run. Murray looks capable of carrying the offense in this one.
Yeah, I like it. This should be a fun game, I think, but more so in terms of playoff implications than actual fantasy scoring. As far as DeAndre Hopkins,
I hate him with Brock Osweiler. I said
Yeah.
it going into the season, and it's just gotten worse and worse. There's going to be a point where he just rolls up good numbers, but the Raiders have been steadily improved against the pass.
Hmm.
You know, and a lot of the Hopkins volume has been sucked up by Fuller and C.J. Fedorowicz. So,
Yeah.
we're going to struggle to line up any passing game option on either side. I do think the Texans' best play is Lamar Miller. They're a run heavy team anyway. He'll carry the offensive load against the Raiders defense. It's not been bad against the run or fantasy running backs. They're 12th against the run, 11th against fantasy running backs, but they're just good enough defensively to force the Texans to rely heavily on Miller run and pass.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I just think, it's weird with Hopkins. We just looked at him as such a high-end option last year with volume, and I initially, like, I wanted to look at him, oh, okay, Monday night, like, this could be a great, like, way to end the week and play
Yeah,
him and get all those points, but you're just like, what is his upside right now?
yeah.
100 yards and a touchdown, I feel like is his ceiling, like, with
Now
Osweiler.
his price has come down, so there
Yeah.
is something to like there. But I just can't trust Osweiler. I can't trust them to get the ball consistently to Hopkins because he hasn't shown it. Eventually, he's going to be able to do it, and there's going to be a surprising week that he does. Raiders, since the bad start when they were getting ripped by, I think it was the Saints, the Falcons. Matt Ryan, Drew Brees were ripping them downfield. They've played pretty well against the other quarterbacks in the league. So I'm going to expect they play pretty well in this Monday night raucous Oakland Raiders environment against
Mm.
Brock Osweiler.
Yeah, that's one thing we sometimes underrate. Like you mentioned, those first 2 weeks against Breeze and what we now know as an MVP candidate in Matt Ryan. I mean, those were tough matchups for everyone, not just them.
Yeah.
So that affects a lot of their season-long stats. So I do think that's important to look into. As we wrap up here, is there anything specific you want to throw in there before we head out?
I'm just going to keep harping on the thing I've harped on in the past few weeks is daily fantasy era kind of took the onus off the premium running back because they just didn't produce the value. That hasn't been the case this year. The elite wide receivers have been disappointing. The elite running backs have played up to value. So keep loading up on those premium running backs in the right matchup. Love DeMarco Murray, Ezekiel Elliott against anyone. LaShawn McCoy for volume.
Le'Veon Bell, yeah.
Le'Veon Bell. They're all in good matchups and very, very consistently productive at their prices.
It's true. When I go to roster construction, I just want to hoard them all in one lineup. But like on FanDuel, you can only fit 2 in. You're like, man, this does not feel good.
Flex positions.
Well, thanks for checking out this video. And as always, if you want to check out the Week 11 slate breakdown, that's on the site. Give Eric a follow on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle again?
At Eric Max Sports.
There you
And
go.
I'm sorry if I get too political on there. I do have another job with Newsmax, which is a political news website, and it's been a busy season for me.
I'd say it certainly wasn't quiet. That's for sure.
And it's only going to get louder.
As always, if you want to hit me up with questions on Twitter, I'm here. Give us a like and subscribe on these videos if you like them. And as always, good luck this week. We will see you guys in week 12.